My name is Ian Spanier. I'm a portrait photographer based in Los Angeles, California. Today I'm going to take you behind the scenes with me to replicate a portrait shoot that I was doing during COVID of motorcycle riders. It was a personal project that I came up with sort of as a challenge to myself to come up with a way to shoot at a higher aperture than I normally shoot with. Now, when I did this project, my limitation was just based on my equipment and my location. The entire project was done in my living room, and I wanted to create a white studio look in this small space with limited ceiling height. Today, we're in a big studio, so it's a lot easier. And I've got one more advantage, the FJ800, which is more power, more output. That's gonna allow me to do exactly what I wanted to do, but wasn't able to fully do with the FJ400. Now, I made the FJ400 work, but I had some limitations. With the FJ800, those limitations are gone, so let's see what happens. So I tend to lean towards the simple things. All of my schooling, if you want to put it that way, in lighting comes from the original one source, which is the sun. So everything I learned about lighting really didn't come from school or any instructional situations. It was really from witnessing what the sun does in different situations. And then when I got my hands on equipment, it was trying to replicate those different things once I was in a studio or on location working with those equipment and modifiers and all those other pieces. So for today's setup, I have 4 lights going. Essentially what I wanted was to be able to shoot at this high aperture so that I could have a lot of depth of field in an image, which is not my typical style. I tend to live in the f7.1 zone. I don't know why, but it just sort of works for my eye and it works for my style. But I wanted to be able to shoot at high apertures like f16, f22, and have that as another trick in my bag for different types of portraits that I would be doing. So starting from the back, I've got 2 FJ400 IIs with 43-inch deep silver umbrellas hitting the background, which is a white cyc. So that's gonna help create a more white effect. Now, I'm not always concerned with perfect white in a situation like this because some of the work that I do on these images is going to be in post. So I don't need a perfectly clean image. If it was for a client, I might be doing perfectly clean, including the floor and everything else. Coming back from there, my key light is going to be my Rapid Box Beauty Dish on the FJ800. Now, the limitation that I faced when I started this project, when I was shooting with the FJ400, was that sometimes I wanted a baffle and a grid. But the baffle cut down some of the power, and I was basically pushing my light as close to my subject as I possibly could already, and I didn't want to jump up any higher in ISO. So because of that, I sort of had to make some sacrifices, let's put it that way. So in order to use the baffle, in some cases when I really needed to, and the grid, I had to push my light closer to my subject, thus changing the quality of light slightly. Other cases, I would pull the baffle and just go with the grid. So limitations, but maybe things that not everybody would notice. With the FJ800, I've got more output, insane recycle time, so the ability to shoot both with the baffle and the grid at the same time really puts me exactly where I want it to be. Now, my light is fairly close to my subject, but that's with intent. I want that style of light where the light cuts off very quickly from my subject. The grid's gonna help focus that light onto my subject's face and not falling down her body as we go. The baffle is going to spread that light a little bit and soften it, which again is the effect that I wanted from the quality of light that's going to come out of the Rapid Box Beauty Dish. In the back, behind me, is a 7-foot shoot-through umbrella and another FJ400 II unit. And the reason I'm doing that is my fill light. Now, I like to have a fill light combined with my key light so that I have more information in the shadow, even though I'm creating a very direct light from that key light, and it's all about the ratio between the 2 lights. So the FJ800 is going to be about 2 stops above my fill light. That's with complete intent. I want that fill light to fill in those shadows, but I don't want a ton of information coming out of the fill light because I don't want to overpower the FJ800. So with that falling of light and that direction of light, once I get to post, I can have all of the tools available to me to hone that in and really create the look that I'm going for. All right, Tori, so the first one I'll shoot a little bit tighter, and then I'm gonna do a full length as well, and we'll take a look at everything, make sure that we're good to go. Okay. So everything looks good to me as far as the tighter shot goes. I love the way the light is falling on her face. We have a great exposure. Again, light metered it from the beginning, light metered that ratio between the key light and the fill light so that I had that ratio of power that I really wanted, so that there's some detail in that shadow that I can always darken later, but don't have to pull information out of. The background is not pure white. As I said, I don't necessarily want to be pure white in this case. Because there's some accessories that we're gonna use on the shoot, I don't want a lot of kickback from my background, which unnecessarily will affect the image. I like this cutout effect, which is why I have the two black fabrics bouncing negative fill back into my subject. When we go to the full length, what we see is pretty common of when you do a setup like this, that as long as you have something flagging some of the lights, you're going to get some effect from that. So you can see on the floor, we have this gray shadow, this gray horizon line that's happening. I'm gonna cut that down a little bit by opening up some of these flags so that some of that light will spill a little bit more. Now I don't need it to be perfect white, but I do want it to be a little bit less of that dark quality of light. I think I can also go up just a touch in power on that background. Right now, it is almost a full stop below my key light, and I think that's a little bit too much. So I'm gonna pump up those backlights a little bit, let a little bit more light spill towards my subject. That should help fill in that floor a little bit and make for a cleaner image. So one of the things that you need to pay attention to if you are removing some of those flags that are blocking some of that light is that those backlights that are hitting the background are not hitting your subject. If I open them up too much, then the corner of those umbrellas that are back there are gonna spill some light back on Tori, which I don't want. So that's something to watch out for whenever you're doing a clean setup like this, whether it's on a white background or colored seamless or fabric backgrounds. Anytime you're in that situation where you're lighting the background, you have to be aware of what those lights are doing and where they're going to hit, because if they hit your subject, it could be negative. So as I move Tori down to the ground for a couple shots, obviously I'm going to adjust my key light to accommodate her moving where her head is. So often I'll check behind my subject to make sure that the light is still falling in the same way it was when we were standing. So the easiest way to do that is to stand behind your subject and just take a quick peek. And essentially what I'm doing is looking at the center of my key light, making sure that it's pretty much aimed right at the bridge of her nose. And if it's in that position, then it should match what we're doing when we're standing. I think it's really important as a photographer to constantly push yourself and get yourself in uncomfortable places. When I came up with the idea of shooting in this style, really what I was looking to do was open up a different way of shooting. So I'd have yet one more solution in this sort of bag of tricks that I talk about having when my clients present me with either something new on a shoot, or perhaps that I'm introducing them to something new that I say, oh, I have this other style that I can shoot as well. Now this doesn't work for everybody. Some photographers pick one lane and stick with it, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just like to have a lot of different abilities to always have a solution to whatever challenges I face throughout the day. Being able to shoot at this higher aperture allows for a deeper focal length for the portraits that I do, which allow me to sort of stretch outside the standard portraits that I typically make. So yes, normally I'd have somebody just standing on set just like Tori is, and I would shoot, a very straightforward portrait. Being able to have her extend her hand out to me or hold a helmet and shoot at a very wide angle, still get a lot of that depth of field in play, allows me to change the look and make something very different and unique, which only stretches my sort of abilities. And so having that stretch out gives me that opportunity to have fun with something that I do on a regular basis. When I'm working on any set where I have multiple lights, I work in groups. So the backlights are two separate groups themselves because I want to choose and control each side individually and then combine them. My key light is its own group and my fill light is its own group. That way, between the 4 lights, I have 4 individual groups that I can control. The interface of sliders on the FJ800 and the FJ400 II make for pretty practical use. It's what we do every day in Photoshop, in Lightroom, in Envato AI, which is the program I use, and everything is slider based. So now it becomes very intuitive and you're working with such ease because everything just seems the way it should be. This is very similar to our phones, our tablets, our computers these days. So when it becomes second nature, it just allows you to move that much faster. So controlling each of these groups is super easy. Plus I have the FJ800 trigger, which allows me to control everything from camera if I want to make subtle changes. But having all of these things available just makes for an easier day, and I can focus more on my subject and less on the technical part of the equipment. Most of the sets that I create are ones that I want to be able to replicate. It goes back to why I've always kept these notes in these notebooks of mine so that I can always go back and replicate an idea in different situations that might present different challenges to do the exact same thing. When I started this project, it was in the heart of COVID and I only had my living room available to me to shoot in. The ceiling height in my living room changes 3 different heights. And because of that, I was limited to where I could place my lights, but the thing that remained the same is the ratio between the lights. So that 2-stop difference between my key light and the fill light is very repeatable. In a studio that's got no limit on the ceiling height really, I can still do the exact same feel and look and replicate that lighting so that in a whole scheme, meaning the entire project, I can have the same look going throughout something that I shot over 3 years. So as COVID slowed down and I continued on the project, the actual last shoot of the whole project was outdoors, but I was able to do the exact same setup outdoors with those same ratios. The only difference was now I had a big softbox, meaning the sky, acting as part of my fill. So when I had that, I lowered my fill that was behind camera and used that sky fill as part of that ratio. I still had the key light at that 2-stop ratio above that fill. So that allowed me to create the exact same look, but in a totally different environment, just like this is. This is quite different than my living room, but really everything is the same. All in all, today's experience was very different than how I was shooting this project before. Being able to use the FJ800 made a tremendous difference because I was able to work with so much more power at a lower power setting on my strobe. That meant more capability of more shots. It meant lower ISO settings. It meant not necessarily taxing my light in trying to do what I originally wanted to do with this project, but was sort of pushing the FJ400 a little too much. So by being able to shoot with the baffle and the grid, which cuts quite a bit of power from the light, but still be able to shoot not necessarily at the full power setting of my strobe, allowed me to just really work more efficiently. So all in all, it's a game changer for me. More power is definitely a good thing.